Hi, everyone. This is Alison Bodine from Climate Convergence. We're going to give it just one more minute to let everyone come in to the webinar tonight. Welcome and thank you for coming. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Alison Bodine. I am here as a central organizer with Climate Convergence here in Metro Vancouver. I am wanting to really recognize that we are here today in an emergency and an urgent basis in order to share together some of the advances in climate action that have been made over the last few months here in British Columbia. But we also have to start by recognizing that we are meeting at a time when for many people, there has been some awakening to the continuing genocide against Indigenous peoples here in Canada. And for many of us, it has also been a time of really recognizing the continuous impact of this genocide against Indigenous peoples and its close relationship with ourselves within the environmental and climate justice movement. I'm speaking about the finding of 215 children, Indigenous children, buried in unmarked graves in Kamloops. I'm speaking, though, also about all of us who work together in order to fight and defend Indigenous rights, being able to recognize the moment that we are in today as an example of how much farther we have to go to recognize our united struggle in defense of Indigenous rights and for a better world. So before I go any further, I want to, and I'm honored to, invite up Kelly White, Coast Salish elder, who is here today as a broadcaster, as a longtime social justice activist and leader, to begin our webinar here tonight. Please join me in welcoming Kelly White. Kelly, you're muted. Sorry.
Good rehearsal by myself. Am I good now?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Haitskasiam, the four directions, the spirit of all living. Haitskasiam, the spirit of four directions, life givers, the swimmers, the four-legged, the winged, and the crawlers of the earth, the two-legged. Haitskasiam, for the spirit of living in the water, the land, and the air, our caretakers in this life. Haitskasiam, for the ghosts of our ancestors, our 10 million that did not return from residential schools, disappeared. Haitskasiam, Sitsotsiam, for the strength of will and the highest honor, healing our nations of united resistance to apathy, for the strength to get up and stand up and be strong support and hold our hand out to help brothers and sisters in the time of need. Haitskasiam, Sitsotsiam, climate convergence this evening. Coordinators, participants, and those at home doing their own realm of justice for creation, for climate justice and convergence and unity, networking for the safety of all. in the spirit of the children being unearthed soon, our Eagle song, thanking them for carrying our message on their back at the time of their suffering. Thankful for the participants that are out this evening and for the strength of being able to carry on and network in such times of hardship for the sacred life of all that are suffering, so that we can be flick of the switch lifestyle. Thankful for the creation of unity this evening and the strength in the knowledge being shared that will help us all with uplifting messages, holding one another up. Thank you for the brothers and sisters helping one another in the highest honor in the spirit of creating justice. Thank you, climate change, for being that semblance of justice in the highest of your honor. Thank you for being here this evening and moving the messages this evening where it is necessary and needed desperately. Thank you, all my relations.
Thank you, Kelly, for your opening tonight. We're going to be posting in the chat in just a minute a gathering that Callie White is helping to organize at Peace Arch Park tomorrow, bringing people up also from Washington State in recognition of the 215 children and the fact that Indigenous children's lives matter. We are here in recognition of the continued struggle, both for our climate here in British Columbia and for Indigenous rights, but in recognition that 95% of British Columbia is unceded Indigenous territory. And I am presenting here today from the unceded and stolen territories of the Coast Salish, Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, and Squamish nations. Thank you. As we're here today on June 4th, 2021, in Climate Convergence, we are recognizing that it has been over 1 year that we've been gathering online, organizing webinars, connecting and coordinating with one another in a way that we didn't practice until the pandemic began. I want to recognize that because I think that in itself is a great achievement. The fact that we have connected with people around the world over the last year in a way that we knew was possible, but we didn't put into practice until the pandemic occurred. Today on June 4th is a day before June 5th, which is World Environment Day, which will be marked around the world by continued resistance against climate change and a call for climate justice and Indigenous rights. And here in British Columbia, on Vancouver Island, people from all walks of life have come together to protest the cutting down of old growth forest in an area known as Fairy Creek. There's been 18 days now of police enforcement of an injunction against the protests, but the protests have been going for more than 300 days in defense of the forests on Pachida and Ditida territories. So far, there have been 164 people arrested in the past 18 days. And tonight we will hear from one of the organizers at Fairy Creek who has been standing up for the old growth forests. People across the Lower Mainland, throughout BC and in Alberta, have kept up a sustained struggle against the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion project for over 10 years. However, the Liberal Trudeau government has continued to pour millions of taxpayer dollars into this dangerous project, set to bring tar sands oil from Alberta to British Columbia. Costs for this project have ballooned from $7.4 billion in 2016 to over $12 billion today, which we'll see is a familiar, all too familiar story for resource extraction projects in British Columbia. And of course, the taxpayers are on the hook for the bill, having already purchased the $4.5 billion existing Trans Mountain pipeline. Now the pipeline in Trans Mountain has received approval by the Canada Energy Regulator to begin drilling a 13-foot diameter hole that is 2.6 kilometers long right through Burnaby Mountain, under Simon Fraser University and under the homes of many, putting tens of thousands of people's lives directly at risk. The cutting of trees has now been stalled in the Lower Mainland through continuous protests that have been happening over the last many months, as well as through the work of people like the Community Nest Finding Network, which has identified multiple violations of environmental regulations on behalf of Trans Mountain, especially when it comes to the impact on endangered and migratory bird species. People are taking a stand in new and creative ways. Also, at the end of February, NDP Premier John Horgan announced the government would continue building the Site C mega dam in the Peace River Valley of BC. We have Ken Boone here tonight to tell us directly what is going on around him. John Horgan doubled down on the excuse that the project has gone beyond the quote point of no return. The new project estimate is $16 billion, almost double the $8.3 billion it was supposed to cost in 2014. BC Hydro has missed every single cost projection and cannot promise they won't go over by billions more due to massive, unresolved, and dangerous geotechnical issues. The issue of Indigenous rights also persists in the Site C Dam in Peace River Valley. The West Moberly Nation is going to be taking the BC government to court next year in opposition to Site C. And yet the BC government pretends to claim that they find it, agreeable partners in the Indigenous community and are working in the best interests of all. It is in this context that Climate Convergence wanted to bring people together today. These climate-destroying projects are being shoved down our throats at the expense of Mother Earth and Indigenous rights, but the struggle against them is advancing and moving forward. Despite the challenges put on us by the COVID-19 pandemic, the movement for climate justice is making steps and advancing as we continue to work together through developing creative actions that respect the health and safety of our communities throughout the pandemic, through organizing events online that works towards developing our collective understanding of how to confront the crucial work that remains and is right in front of us, and through working to deepen our coordination, consistency, and cooperation with one another. And in that light is why we organized the webinar here tonight. So we're going to have a number of speakers. I will say that our speaker, Joshua Wright from Fairy Creek, one of the Fairy Creek camps is being actively raided today, and he is very busy with working on dealing with that situation and highlighting that situation and filming it as he is a filmmaker. So he is going to come and join us in the webinar when he can, as best he can. And also tonight, we have some other great speakers, including Ken Boone, who joins us from the Peace River Valley, and Thomas Davies, who's joining us from Climate Convergence Metro Vancouver as a central organizer. And also at the end of the program, we will be recognizing the contributions of a person that was dedicated to the work of climate convergence and specifically of climate justice throughout his life, Eagle Eyes, who passed away tragically 3 years ago. So we will have a time to remember his contributions and his life towards the end of the program. Across the province, people are finding ways to stand up against projects that are destroying nature and trampling on Indigenous rights, from consistent resistance to the TMX Pipeline as it tries to rip a line from east to west for a reckless tar sands pipeline, to dogged opposition to the Site C Dam, which would flood the Peace River Valley, to growing mobilizations to stop the logging of old growth forests on Vancouver Island. People across BC are telling Premier John Horgan that if their government won't keep its promise to protect the planet, we will work together and organize to stop these disastrous projects. So thank you all for joining us here tonight to hear on the ground updates and to find out more about how we can support these vital ongoing flashpoints of resistance. I encourage people to please type in the chat, to watch the chat. We'll be typing there about how to support and sharing the links on Facebook as well, where we are live streaming. But without further ado, I will once again say that my name is Alison Bodine. I am a Climate Convergence Central Organizer, a journalist, author, and researcher with a focus on environmental Latin America and immigration issues, and will be emceeing the program tonight. And I'm excited and glad to introduce Ken Boone, who we've had with Climate Convergence here before. Ken and his wife Arlene live and farm at Bear Flat in the Peace River Valley between Hudson's Hope and Fort St. John. They have been deeply involved in the fight to stop the Site C Dam for many years and are both directors with the Peace Valley Environment Association. Thank you, Ken. It's our pleasure to have you here tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Allison, and I want to thank Climate Convergence for inviting me on once again, and I want to thank Kelly for that heartfelt welcoming. And we see what's going on nowadays. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, I would even myself argue Site C seems kind of minor compared to what's going on, with Fairy Creek, and then of course with the revelations from Kamloops now. And it's all part of the same picture in a lot of ways, of course, and the same problem. And and no doubt that's probably what's caused you folks to put on this emergency webinar, because it just seems like there's so many things going sideways, so many things being done wrong. And there's so much good that we could be doing. There's so much lost opportunity happening right now. But I'm here to speak about Site C, so that's what I'll carry on with now. And sometimes I get the sense, from some people, in the who are paying attention to climate change and really concerned about that sometimes large hydroelectric projects are not really high on their list. In fact, maybe they, I think some people think that large hydro, might have to, unfortunately, be part of the climate change solution out there, with increase, the potential increase for, a lot more need for electricity. So apparently, with transportation and such. And and I just have to argue that is so much not the case. And in fact, there's a fellow by the name of Norm Farrow who has a blog. I don't know, if I encourage people to check it out. It's called Insights, and he wrote one here just a couple of days ago that I think really hits the nail. And I'm going to quote some parts from it. So it starts, and it's called Leadership Failures. And he starts off with, some people see citizen opposition to British Columbia's Site C hydropower dam as hostility to the goal of electrifying our world. And he goes, not so. And even before its budget doubled to 16 billion, the project was a mistake. By diverting focus and finance, Site C and BC Hydro are blocking community and distributed energy initiatives that could provide long-term carbon-free electricity at lower costs without offending Indigenous rights or adding to environmental injustice. And I'm so thankful that someone like Norm, he's really nailed it, I think. And then he goes on to give some examples, and I won't go in there, but then he goes on to say, energy democracy is a social movement aiming to create a new paradigm for electric power supply. The objective is to link social justice with technical innovations by involving local communities in creation and ownership of renewable energy sources. And, you know, with the existing technologies that we have now, you know, and that's an important thing to make note of. Seth Klein makes real note of that in his recent book. We have the technology now to stop building hydro dams. We don't need any more hydro dams, especially in British Columbia. They are, you know, the destruction from hydro dams, and unfortunately, maybe too often it's out of sight and out of mind for a lot of people, but it is just horrible. And you know, and we're seeing it all take place again here in the Peace River Valley right now, and we don't need to do that anymore. And you know, what's a project like Site C just carries on with that old colonialism, big mega project, and overpriced power and destruction and impacts to you know, rural people and First Nations and all that. You know, they're the ones that bear the destruction from that. You know, so, and he goes on to say, since the 1960s, BC Hydro has destroyed land and dispossessed or marginalized residents to complete mega projects. While publicly owned, it is a monopolistic business empire stuck in a 20th century mindset. The company has routinely misinformed citizens, used lies to justify continuous expansion despite zero demand growth for the better part of 2 decades now. You know, and sure, admittedly, that might change, but for the last 2 decades, despite their predictions of continued expansion of the need for power, that has not happened with the efficiencies that we have now. With just you name it. You know, we just don't use as much power as we used to, and yeah, that might change a little bit, but we do not need large hydro anymore. So, you know, and large projects like this, they're just rotten to the core. But they have a huge lobby, and there's a big lobby movement going on now, and Trudeau's buying into it. You know, Prime Minister Trudeau, and it appears that Premier John Horgan's buying into it. That being influenced to continue the practice of building large hydro, and that has to stop. I didn't think Site C would ever be built. They're building it. Whether it ever gets completed, we'll see. The First Nations have a very strong case. West Moberly First Nations and Raven Trust is fundraising for them. That case, I believe, goes to court next year. People can go to Raven's website and help support that legal challenge. Hopefully, this will be the last large hydro dam in BC and hopefully in Canada. And in regards to climate change, just this past week, an organization, Save the World's Rivers, I think they're kind of based out of the States, they took it upon themselves to crunch the numbers on Site C greenhouse gas emissions. BC Hydro's had some outlandish claims on greenhouse gas emissions from Site C, where they have Site C positioned as being greener than even wind and solar. I don't know how they came to their numbers, but two climate scientists, Gary Walkner and Mark Easter, through Save the World's Rivers, have crunched the numbers on Site C, and it's the numbers are about 35, 40 times worse than what BC Hydro is putting forward. I encourage people to go to Save the World's Rivers and can check out that report. And we've posted it as well at the Peace Valley Landowner Association. So yeah, at this time with COVID, and I think there was great hopes of building back better. And actually in the States, I think we actually see signs of that, fortunately under President Biden. I think they're trying anyway, and every government decision in the United States is being mandated to view through a climate change lens. Imagine that. Imagine if we were doing that, and we could do that, and we should do that. But that is obviously not happening when we're when we're buying pipelines and when we're logging the last old standing, old growth forest in the province and continuing to dam our rivers. So I'll just leave it at that. But, I think we're all in this together and it's all the same fight. And I'm really encouraged to, the action that I'm seeing on Fairy Creek that's needed. It's unfortunate people have to get arrested, but unfortunately we've seen it in the past. That's how change often has to happen, change for the better. And my hat goes off to those folks taking that stand. So thank you.
Hey, Ken, I'm just going to share that picture that you sent to me of from out the back of your backyard so people can get a sense of what it looks like.
Yeah, and if you want to just describe for a minute what the construction is like, Ken, I mean, is it every day? Is it full bore ahead?
Yeah, it's definitely full bore ahead in the valley. So that was about 2 hours ago, maybe an hour ago. That's I took that picture maybe not even 100 yards from where I'm standing or where I'm sitting in our house. That's just over the bank. And that's where they're building the pillars for the new bridge over the tiny Cache Creek. You can't even see Cache Creek in that picture. We have a perfectly good highway here and a perfectly good bridge. But because of the reservoir, everything you see in that picture, that's in the Cache Creek. That's a little side valley that runs into the Peace River. It's called Cache Creek. It comes in from the north. And all of what you see there will be flooded down in the bottom there. They'll have about 80, 90 feet of water on top of it. So they're building a bridge across that. That's about an $80 million contract right there. And that's only one of 5 bridges required for the realignment of the Highway 29. And it's not the biggest bridge. The Halfway River Bridge, it will be 1.1 kilometer long. It'll be the longest bridge in northern BC. This bridge here will be 600 meters long. Meanwhile, the Alaska Highway crossing of the Peace River at Taylor, the Taylor Bridge, is drastically in need of replacement, far busier than Highway 29. It's the main route, north-south route to Alaska. And there's no money to replace that. But apparently there's lots of money to build Site C and all the impacts it causes to infrastructure. What you see there is a pumper truck pumping concrete. Almost every day they're pumping concrete down underneath what you see in the pillars. There's giant pilings underneath each one of them pillars, and then of course they build them up there. So, there again, greenhouse gases, generators running right around the clock, and it just goes on, and it's all unnecessary. We don't need a realigned Highway 29 because we don't need Site C.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you for all of you and Arlene and everyone else and your constant work of opposing this project. And John Horgan has said that it was too late to go back, but it will never be too late to go back. This is a disastrous project. It is dangerous and it's flooding. Also, we have to remember enough farmland that could feed, I think it's 1 million people every year into the future. It's really disastrous what this government is pushing on us and then on the Indigenous people in the region and on people like you. So thank you for your update. There's some questions already coming in, which is excellent, but we're going to do the two other updates and then we'll do all the questions together if that's all right with you. And I'd encourage people, please keep typing questions in the chat or in the Q&A. We're watching and we'll continue our discussion here tonight. Next up, we have been joined by Joshua. He was able, after what I've heard is a very busy and critical day, to join us once again in order to talk about what has been happening at Fairy Creek. I'm sure a number of people on the webinar tonight have been following very closely what has been happening in the critical work of standing up for old growth forests. But I also know there might be people on the call today who may not be on Facebook, may not have the ability to watch the videos. So I think and Climate Convergence thought it was really important in order to be able to share some of that perspective here with everyone. So we do have one short video we wanted to show in order to give some context. And then Josh, from there, if you give us an update and kind of let us know what's happening on the ground, that would be much, much appreciated. I am just going to pull up the video here, I think. Here we go. Give me 1 second. But there isn't.
As we gather right now, 30 RCMP vehicles have descended on Pacheedaht territory and are in the process of arresting people who are defending Adiatsk, the headwaters of the Fairy Creek watershed, where this all began 10 months ago when we set up road blockades preventing logging road incursions into the unlogged Fairy Creek watershed. And it is upsetting to see 10 months later, with a massive groundswell of public outrage to the status quo that is laying waste to the equivalent of 34 soccer fields of old-growth forest on Vancouver Island, that the provincial government has done nothing to match the courage and the principled leadership of Indigenous peoples asserting their right to defend their sovereign territories from the onslaught of continued old-growth logging.
So we're currently at HQ, which is on the road that leads to River Camp. At the end of this dead end, they want to construct a road that will go to the Fairy Creek untouched watershed, which is the last untouched watershed on Vancouver Island.
I'm here locked to the Captain Cook statue in solidarity with the people who have been arrested out on the front lines in the forest. In British Columbia, there's less than 3% of ancient forest left. Seems to me a no-brainer that you don't cut those things down, even if it wasn't a climate crisis. So this guy here, Captain James Cook, who in a way we could say started it all, some of those trees that the forest protectors are protecting were ancient when he arrived. Premier John Horgan promised to protect those old-growth forests, but instead of protecting those forests, old-growth logging increased by 43% in the last year under John Horgan. We're living in a pretty sick time, folks, and this is taxpayer dollars at work, hurting and arresting people doing the job the Premier himself promised to do.
Yeah. Standing up for the bears.
I was present at some of the arrests of Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people at the police checkpoint on the way into Kaikous on Saturday. We had a peaceful circle led by Katie Jones and Elder Rose Henry. There were 4 police officers watching us until reinforcements arrived. We got word that there were 18 trucks and cruisers and somewhere around 15 paddy wagons on their way in. I was speaking to the police officer wearing the moose hide pin and told him I know in your heart you know this is wrong. I could see him start to tear up, but he forced himself to look away. They all forced themselves to look away and not make eye contact and feel what's right in their hearts, especially with the Indigenous police officers. It's painful to see, but they made that choice to be complacent while they violently arrested Indigenous people while wearing the moose hide pins.
What we have seen are the RCMP threatening to use rubber bullets and tear gas on peaceful frontline forest protectors sitting 100 feet up in ancient hemlocks.
Oh, here they come. The choppers are circling overhead.
What we have seen this week are loggers who have been let into the exclusion zone where there are no legal observers, where there are no media, and where they have been falling trees, 100-foot trees, 1 to 2 tree lengths away from people who are occupying the forest canopy to protect those ancient forests. But if this is not a moment for public outrage, what is?
We are getting ready to receive the police, the RCMP in the next days. We have optimism, we are confident that we can do it, but we need to do that together.
Stop the destruction of the ancient temperate rainforests on unceded Dididot and Pachidot territories and all across so-called British Columbia.
Yes, we will definitely post the link to that video. I don't know, Joshua, if any of your footage was there. If not, there's other videos we'll post links to as well. I wanted to now invite up Joshua Wright. He is the 18-year-old co-creator of the Rainforest Flying Squad and the first person to sound the alarm on approved road building into the Fairy Creek watershed, which we just saw in the film. Joshua uses satellite imagery to track where logging is occurring, advising and guiding fellow activists who are on the ground to prevent logging and road building in over a dozen old growth forests. Thank you, Joshua, for your important work, and thank you for joining us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think that most people here are rather familiar with what's going on, but in case people, there are people who, need context setting. Essentially, this movement started about 10 months ago at this point, when a group of about 24 people set up a road blockade to prevent road building contractors working for the Teal Jones group from building roads into the headwaters of Fairy Creek. And they, the road builders were on the ridge line. People set up a blockade and stopped them. And from there, preventing road building into this last unlogged watershed on southern Vancouver Island outside of a park. It's sort of been franchising ever since. And we've expanded the blockades to protect other old growth forests on the other side of Fairy Creek, as well as on Edinburgh Mountain near Eden Grove, in the Walbrand Valley. For a long time, we were in the KQs, and really all across Apachita and Dididat territories. And on April 1st, it was, the Teal Jones group got an injunction against us. And I think it's 19 days ago, they started arresting peaceful forest defenders. So far, there have been over 160 arrests. That's from the day before yesterday. That's statistic from a few days ago. So at this point, we're expecting more arrests today. And they've successfully broken through KQ's camp and have clear-cut the KQ's. And we're just putting up as much of a fight as we can at all of the other locations. Right now, the contractors for the Teal Jones group are being escorted up to that initial spot where we stopped the logging at Ridge Camp. This morning, a bunch of RCMP showed up at 4:30 in the morning, and they dismantled Waterfall Camp, which was the camp that was preventing access to the headwaters. And now we haven't heard from camp in a couple of hours, but we're sort of in a sort of last minute stand because they really could start building roads into the headwaters of Ferry Creek really any day. And so right now we're calling everyone we can possibly get out to Ferry Creek. There's been a call out for this weekend from the 4th, so starting today to the 6th, to have as many people as we can at Ferry Creek. Last weekend we did this and we managed to take back Waterfall Camp after they'd broken through it the previous time, with hundreds of people just marching past the RCMP. And I would absolutely encourage everybody here to come out if you possibly can. If not, then organize solidarity actions in your town, because it really does help. And it helps get people involved, helps spread awareness. But if you can come out, that's really the biggest thing. I want to sort of just provide a bit of a picture of what's going on there and what the roles do look like. Right now, there are multiple blockades. There's about 5 of them full time, and then there's some redundancy. So there's some blockades that are behind the blockades. In the case of Ridge Camp behind Waterfall, and the main one is Ferry Creek HQ, and you can just look it up on Google Maps. It's pretty much off the pavement, and that's where we're sending everybody to get inducted. And there's a booth there. You'll get greeted. You'll be able to ask any questions you need. And basically, you come ready to pitch a tent and just ready to be a body there. And if you're willing to do more, then that's great too. And if you're willing to be arrested, that's amazing. And if you're willing to sit in a tree, that's incredible. But there's the full spectrum. So you can come up there with your family. You can come up there with your dog and your kids, or you can come up there with the intention of being arrested to take a stand for these forests. And that's what we like. That's the thing we need the most, I'd say. And what that looks like generally is locking yourself down to something in the ground or being in a tree and getting arrested. And what ends up happening in those situations is you get arrested. The RCMP have been releasing a lot of people with no charges because most of their arrests are actually illegal overreaches, and they can't charge us when they arrest people illegally. But if you were charged, you get a civil infraction. So that's what we're asking for people to do right now. And all of this is happening at a time when the BC government promised to protect old growth forests in their 2017 campaign and then in their 2020 campaign. And what they did in the past, since they've been in office, is they've come up with this old growth strategic review, these consultations, and now they had a press conference actually on June 1st, basically saying their new intentions. It was their intentions paper that they were releasing to the public to tell them what they want to do in the future, and their intentions were basically to consult more and to take the people that they had consulted to figure out the other people that they should consult instead of actually taking real action. And that's a well-known strategy that we've seen where the government talks and logs. So the government will talk a good game. Minister Catherine Conroy just put out an op-ed saying that they're going to announce new deferrals and that they're taking action, but they really aren't at this point, because what their own scientists recommended was an immediate moratorium on old growth logging, or immediate deferrals on old growth logging in 1.3 million hectares of old growth across the province. And right now they've deferred a few thousand hectares. They'll say it's 200,000, but that's actually a false figure. And what we're seeing in the meantime is these timber companies going full scaled in terms of trying to liquidate this last 2.7% of old growth forests. And we're at the point where we're not even looking at, we're not even talking about the loss of a rainforest. We've already lost the rainforest that used to be here and has been here since time immemorial. We are now facing the eradication of it, pretty much, in many parts of Vancouver Island and across British Columbia. And that's why we branded this movement not only about Ferry Creek, it's the last stand for old growth, because even 2 or 3 more years of the status quo, the BC government is promising to announce broad sweeping changes in 2023. That's 2 years away, 2.5 years away. And in 2.5 years, about half of the old growth that we have now will be gone. They're currently logging old growth at a rate of 150,000 hectares per year across the province. And to put that into perspective, of the best old growth, there's only about 35,000 hectares left. So you can kind of do the math yourself and figure out how long it'll take them to cut all of that. So that's why we're out there. That's why people are getting arrested. That's why we've been out there for 10 months. And This has happened before. This isn't a new thing. This happened in Clayoquot Sound 30 years ago. It also happened in the Walbrand. In both instances, they managed to get large sections of forest protected. In the case of the Walbrand, it was 15,000 hectares. In the case of Clayoquot Sound, it was hundreds of thousands. And direct action works, and that's what we're doing now. And this actually has the potential to become a lot bigger than Clayoquot Sound and to protect a lot more forest. So it's kind of like a once in a lifetime movement to, or moment to actually force the government to make these changes, because even in a few years, it's going to be too late. And, that's why we're encouraging everybody who possibly can to come out. If you can't come out, organize a rally. If you see a forest in your own community that's at risk, start organizing to do direct action there, honestly. And we just need to keep the pressure up right now. You can obviously follow us on social media. I'm sure everybody does at Fairy Creek Blockade and Rainforest Flying Squad. And you can also donate to our legal fund. But the biggest thing we need is, just rally your community, get as many friends together as you possibly can, and come up to Fairy Creek, even if it's just for one day, and even if you don't intend to get arrested, because we just need people on the front lines, and we need people to witness this. Because honestly, there's no better feeling than knowing that we're outnumbering the RCMP and knowing that there's nothing that they can do to stop us. Having Elder Bill Jones cut the police line and just say, I'm bringing my 200 guests across the police line, and there's nothing you can do. That's what will ultimately win this fight for us. So we need you out there. Like, I cannot stress that enough.
Great, thank you. And we collected, I think, some links in the chat, like that we could post, but if you have links or anything that you want to post in the chat, that would be great. And anything about kind of continually monitoring and everything. I know there have been actions here in Metro Vancouver, in Surrey, they're planning another action this week. And then someone has just posted one taking place at the Vancouver Art Gallery tomorrow. So encourage people, if you know about actions, please do also post them in the chat. And thank you, Joshua, for joining us here tonight. There's people kind of from across the province, actually, and maybe a few international folks, because I think the biggest thing with the resistance against these projects is we're still constantly fighting with mainstream media. The video we saw hasn't been shown on CBC. We've seen nothing about the stand that is taking place in defense of old growth forests. And the scope and the people from different walks of life and the different reasons, the same as how difficult it is to get coverage for resistance against the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion or the Site C Dam or any resistance against these projects. So we all have to work together to build our voices and to share as much as possible. So thank you, Joshua. If you're able to stick around, there might be a few questions, and there also might be a few in the chat if you have time. I have just invited up two organizers from Stop TMX, Protect the Planet, which I just think I got backwards. So they'll correct me. Christine and Maureen are here, and I just wanted to first invite Christine to give us any updates from the work that she's been doing, especially for the Birdwatching Network and the important work of the Holmes Creek and other camps, and any updates on the resistance that you are helping to organize. Christine would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks for the invite. Thanks Climate Convergence for hosting. Thanks for the wonderful opening, Kelly White. And yeah, it's an honor to be here. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how it's all the same. It's all the same thing. So yeah, I'm happy to report about some of the resistance here in Coast Salish territory. So I'm with Protect the Planet Stop TMX. Our website is stoptmx.ca. And yeah, I guess Maureen and I will kind of tag team on this. So Protect the Planet Stop TMX is basically a coalition of which Climate Convergence is a member. And yeah, I guess our kind of central feature is our tree sit. I'm gonna let Mo talk to that. I thought, yeah, I'll follow up on what Allison mentioned, which is our community nest finding network. It's an honor to speak about that. And I thought I'd also mention our Prayer Circle Direct Action Group, which had a successful action on Monday. So, and of course, it's all connected, just like this movement. So maybe I'll start with the prayer circle because, so I'm a core member of that. It's basically an interfaith group of people who consider themselves, you know, part of Mother Earth and yeah, and have a love of creation, depending on, doesn't matter what tradition you're from. Feature is that we gather often in silence. And so I'm a practicing Buddhist, so meditation is something that I practice for situations where we may be sitting on the ground in uncomfortable situations for up to 10 hours, as we did on Monday. So some of the takeaways on Monday, which is probably the best thing that I'd like to share, is we basically occupied this site at the Brunette River. And it's a particular site where, if anyone lives in so-called Metro Vancouver, you'll know where Highway 1 passes under the Brunette Ave. And of course, Climate Convergence did a great banner drop there on April 24th. And it's a site that we're very, very concerned about because it is critical riparian habitat for an endangered species. It's a little fish that's been here since the Pleistocene, the Nooksack dace. And I've done a fair bit of work on this. I am a plant ecologist by training and have been working in conservation biology for many years. Fish was new to me, fisheries, but you know, you kind of learn the language. And so we've read the authorization from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and it, you know, federal government gives authorization to basically damage this habitat in order to put trenchless pipe underneath 2 tributaries of the Brunette, including this particular location where this one population of this tiny fish exists, one of 6 populations in all of Canada. It's quite a specialist, as you'll expect, and it's really good quality habitat, actually. So on the morning of our action, we actually saw the otter family swimming and playing in the water right there. We saw loads of birds. Of course, the Community Nest Funding Network co-founders were with us, Sarah and Donna. And, you know, we saw all the marked nests that were protected, you know, were very active. But beside that protected area, TMX was actively preparing to build this temporary construction site, temporary work site in order to do this work. So we basically sat down, we met at 6:15 in the morning and basically locked ourselves in place physically with this intention that, like, this is not acceptable. And we basically placed ourselves in front of the excavator. It's the first time I've ever meditated in front of an excavator. And it was pretty amazing. And the thing that I really want to share is that even though, you know, we're kind of, you know, we're meditating, we're praying, we're singing, like we're kind of doing like soft things, we were so powerful. And it was a very strong embodied thing, but TMX didn't come near us. So this is the interesting thing. I think they're scared of us. Like they actually did show up, but they were observing us through binoculars from the other side of the highway. So anyone that was at that banner drop will remember, you know, if you're looking west of Highway 1 to the right, there was like the Best Western Hotel and there's like a parking area. And that's where the security truck was sitting, and they watched us. They watched basically our supporters who were on the sidewalk and along the highway and getting lots of trucks to honk. And but yeah, they didn't come near us. So we had a really full day. I ended up leaving at 3 with an onset of heat stroke, even though, you know, I had sunscreen, hat, shades, everything, but I guess it was the first full day of sun of the summer. And at 4 o'clock, the RCMP did come, and they basically, you know, read the injunction, and kind of the people that were there decided, you know, we've had a full day. And just to say, we are reluctant to get arrested only in as much as that prevents us from going near 500 meters near to any TMX site, which of course is going to put a real dent into the sort of direct action that we want to do. So we decided, you know, it's been a full day. Let's not throw that card out yet. And so we left the site. However, it was then taken over by 3 anonymous individuals who we've just called the Angels, and we don't really know who they are. And they just came and they sat there in front of that excavator until 10 o'clock at night. So we basically shut down a full day's work, and, you know, mixed emotions, because we were kind of thinking about like, oh, maybe we should like camp here, you know, like own it. We got there before they put the injunction signs on the fence. So technically, according to Affleck's injunction, you know, it hadn't been up yet. So we were technically on the right side of the judicial system. But in any case, it went the way it did. And next morning at 4:30 in the morning, you know, big shouts to Sarah Ross from the Community Nest Finding Network. She found an active not hummingbird, that's so April, an active chickadee nest right inside the North Road access to the former Holmes Creek camp, which is where we had our first tree sit for all of last August through to December. She found this active chickadee nest right where they were getting ready to cut trees. They'd actually moved what we called the tank. It's like this big tree cutting Tyrannosaurus Rex machine that's just designed to snap trees and reduce them to timber. And but she saw this nest and she was so surprised. So here we kind of come to like, so they have professional biologists giving them the go-ahead, you know, these environmental monitors. And chickadee nests are so easy to find because they're at eye level typically, and chickadees are really, really industrious. They're in and out all the time. So it's impossible to miss. So how on earth, you know, anyway, that aside, Sarah immediately called the Ministry of the Environment to the Canadian Wildlife Service and reported this, documented and everything. And we watched the site for the whole day, and we saw TMX, all the workers, you know, they were ready for a full day work, and there were many workers, and they were just kind of like shuffling their feet and like, not really doing much. And then of course, the next day we got the word that the Canada Energy Regulator has now issued a stop work order for the entire length of the pipeline. That's from Edmonton to Burnaby, in terms of tree clearing and mowing. So the wording isn't specific to birds' nests, and Trans Mountain has issued a statement saying like, oh no, it was one of our contractors being non-compliant, da 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 da. But we smell rats, and we also smell BS. I'm not going to say the word because I don't want to speak French. But yeah, so we're really watching this closely. And maybe the last thing I'll say, if I may, this kind of plays into another aspect of, you know, there's this analogy that we're basically throwing marbles at the machine. Like, we don't know what's going to work, so we're just using whatever we have, and great creativity emerges. But one thing that I personally have been working on along with my partner Rod Marining is we successfully got an environmental dispute resolution fund from West Coast Environmental Law. So we just finished stage 1, which was an exploratory grant looking at how we can use endangered species, or even just an ecosystem protection law. How can we use that to stop TMX? Because, you know, there's an endangered fish here, and what about all these streams that are just getting clear cut right up to the edge? Like, is there no, you know, it's ecocide, but surely there must be something in the law that protects these organisms and communities. So we just finished stage 1, and we're getting ready to apply for stage 2. And yeah, and this is kind of, this would take it further. So I guess I'm sharing this with you because the deadline's June 9th. So this is very much a live wire, and just saying that there may be another legal case coming out where we really, you know, apply our data from our boots on the ground, our observations, our expert witnesses of just this true negligence, reckless disregard for environmental legislation and the rights of life, actually. That's getting a bit soft. Obviously in legalese, that's not a word, but yeah, so watch that space, because there may be some interesting developments coming down the pike. maybe I'll leave it at that and I'll pass.
Nice. Yeah, thank you, Christine.
Those are the questions I had, so.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Definitely. Like I said, I don't think we assume that everyone knows what's happening because we're all on Facebook or we're all connected, but we know with these webinars and with other things we are organizing that we can always reach more people, and we always need to tell the story of what's happening and how to get involved, how to take action, however you can. So I want to invite Maureen, who's also with Protect the Planet, Stop TMX, as Christine mentioned, an organization that includes climate convergence as well, to give some updates too on what's happening with the tree camp.
Thanks so much. I am, we've done a few of these webinars, and it's always wonderful to take part and meet and be with everyone. The interesting thing is, I do remember one of them where somebody just straight out asked us, what is it you're going to do? Like, what should we do that will actually work? And that's always the $1 million question, right? Is that we try all these different things and we don't know always. And sometimes it's actually the enjoyment of everything, right? So the tree sit has been very successful in its own area, certainly has been slowing down things, and in fact kind of provided the opportunity for the birders to be able to come in and do their observing. I was actually up the tree one time watching as their environmental crew went through first, and then the very next morning ours came through and found, I think, 6 or 8 nests in the same area that had been deemed totally clear and appropriate for them to be cutting. So we know that their environmental work is not adequate. And so there's so many different ways that people can take part and be a part of this movement. You don't have to necessarily be a birder. Those people are doing amazing work. We need them, but we also need lots of other people helping out on the ground too. As you've seen, we've got right now, it says that it seems to be until August for the bird nest window to be holding things up, but we're hoping to stop this permanently. So we're going to need a few different rounds of things. And the tree sit has been gearing up and adding in extra trees. We've been training more climbers, and we're always needing more people to help out with dropping off food and things like that. So you can always contact us if you're interested. Christine has put in the link if you're interested in doing something, because I know Fairy Creek needs people right now on the ground. And if you can go there, please do, because that's really sort of their peak time is right now. But if you're someone who can't make it there and you still want to come out and sit in a tree and help stop destruction and all those sorts of things, please do consider checking us out and coming to see us. Or if you're really excited, go to Fairy Creek for the next few weeks, stop them there and then come join us after. There is always more work to be done, and these things are all connected. I do think there's some domino effect, that if we can get things moving in the right direction, we will see that pressure build. And we do have an election coming up again. And those are always times where they make all those promises, but they don't act on them. And we've seen this over and over again. So we need to do what we can to get in there and get that message out and make sure that maybe the media, this is a time, maybe the media will actually pay attention if we force them to. So that is a huge, huge part of things. The last thing I think I was going to just mention there is that, I don't know, we often feel discouraged and we feel frustrated because it does feel like these are massive things, and we're standing up. We are always the David and there's the Goliath. But when you come and join these groups, the people are fabulous. I've heard so many wonderful stories from the people who've been to Fairy Creek about how they had family instantly. And I know that I have family in the Stop TMX group, and we give each other strength to go on, because sometimes we need to take breaks and we need to pass it on to let someone else take over. And we know that they care for, we care for each other, right? And we take turns stepping in and doing what we can, because none of us would have ever gotten anywhere near this much done on our own. So please don't give up hope. Please find a place where you can make a difference. There is somewhere out there that you can do something that will really help. Just contact the right person and keep looking. We all really love that you're just here. The fact that you're here shows you care, and that means you can make a difference. You're going to be able to do something. Just connect, right? Thank you again for having us here and for helping us connect with each other and support each other.
Thank you very much, Maureen and Christine, and everyone. I know there's also people on the call tonight that have been joining in their ways and every way that they can to support what's been happening. I wanted to, I think, go ahead and introduce Thomas Davies, who's going to provide some perspective about the TMX struggle. I encourage people, yes, to keep posting in the chat, keep posting in the Q&A, and if you want to answer some questions, feel free. And then we'll have a discussion and make a few announcements and keep sharing about how to support the various actions that are happening. And hopefully, yeah, someone just posted they're here from other parts of the world, but yes, it's crucial and important that we join together and get support all around the world for what's happening here in BC, in Canada, which has the largest footprint of any of the G8 countries when it comes to GHG emissions. Canada has a great responsibility and order to reverse the destruction that they're causing on this planet. So please help us in doing that. So I want to invite up Thomas Davies. Thomas Davies is a central organizer with Climate Convergence. He is also a unionized pipe fitter and someone that has been involved since Climate Convergence was formed. Thomas is also the author of the book System Change, Not Climate Change, produced by Battle of Ideas Press, which I'll put a link to in the chat. And please join me in welcoming Thomas Davies.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to everybody who logged on tonight and to everybody who's presented so far. It's neat. I see Christina and Maureen like pretty consistently at different actions around the Lower Mainland. And Ken I know only through a computer screen, and Joshua I met by phone this morning, but I feel a very strong connection with all of you. And I know, and also with people whose names I just see in the chat who are saying things like, I would have said that same thing. Like, that's exactly what I was thinking. And we're really happy to be able to have this webinar and to try and link these things and to try and make sure everybody's informed about everything that's going on and has the information that they need to get involved. My plan is just to give a quick update on what's been going on for the last 2.5 months since our last, we usually have a regular webinar called What's Next in the Fight to Stop the TMX Pipeline, and it's been 2.5 months since we've had one. And I think often, especially with the last year, we're kind of thinking, oh, this is a COVID year, like it's kind of a lost year, not much got done. But I think if you look at what grassroots organizations have been able to accomplish in the past year with the health restrictions and actually like following them, unlike the government and industry, is pretty incredible. And I think we might take it for granted. So I want to go through, I just went through the Climate Convergence Facebook page of all the kind of events and news that was posted from the last 2.5 months. And I want people to think about like really how much is moving right now and how much we're able to accomplish even while we're in a lockdown, even while like we can't gather the way that we need to. I think it's just kind of take stock. I think sometimes we take it for granted how much is getting done and what kind of times we're living in. So the last Climate Convergence webinar on TMX was March 24th. And then Christine says it's so April, but that was when, thanks to the great work of the Community Nest Funding Network, tree cutting was stopped in the Burnaby-Coquitlam area because of the finding of hummingbird nests. Then there was actually an action in Victoria against TMX where they're starting to have socially distanced actions where people will stand in a line and hold a red line and spread out in a socially distant way to have a presence against TMX. And then in the end of March, there was a new study from the SFU that said that TMX will likely lead to a 12 billion loss for Canada. That was followed up April 7th. We held a multiple ban number drop action in New Westminster We had 3 overpasses with big new banners against TMX, tons of support. And also at the beginning of April, the Braided Warriors were tying themselves down to TMX equipment and pausing construction there, leading to arrests and court support. There was another Protect the Planet, Stop TMX action in the middle of April, where we did another red line down the Greenway, getting more community support. April 16th, there was actions in front of the AIG insurer organized by 350 Vancouver, demanding that AIG stop insuring TMX. That was also when revelations came out that there's actually a secret oil lobby created by the Trudeau government that has been meeting pretty much constantly since the start of the pandemic. And then, no surprise, the news story is saying that Canada spends $18 billion on financial supports for the fossil fuel industry. That's what they spent last year. Pretty incredible. While this is going on, people have been noticing how much construction has been going on Burnaby Mountain as they go full bore, clearing land and trying to expand the tank farm. And the news about the hummingbirds and stopping construction was around the world. It was covered all across Canada, but also the Guardian newspaper in England covered it up, and it was something that was really encouraging to a lot of people. And again, that was forced by community organizers. It wasn't just finding the nests that was important, it was making sure it was documented. And then there was a time when it wasn't sure whether or not it would actually be enforced. And thanks to community pressure and awareness, it was. In this time also, TMX applied to keep its insurers secret because the Braided Warriors held some really important actions that highlighted TMX insurers who have offices in downtown Vancouver, and TMX was arguing that it would jeopardize its ability to continue the project because major insurers like Zurich have dropped the project. So TMX was arguing that they need to keep their insurers secret to be able to continue the project. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is that I'll skip that, but I think it's just important to know that the largest workplace COVID-19 outbreak in all of Canada during the pandemic is in Alberta at a tar sands project during a turnaround where they purposely put increased capacity of workers, 2 or 3 times more workers than normally work at a time, and just shove them all in there doing maintenance while they and the reason that they do that, they have so many workers at once, is because because they're not producing while they shut down. So they could do it in a much safer way if they didn't want to lose money, but they knew that was going to put people's lives at risk. 2 workers died, and I'll get the figures for how many were actually infected in the end. But when we say that climate justice activists, that oil workers, resource workers have more in common with climate justice activists than they do with oil corporations, that's why. There's also been a lot of ongoing court cases, and Earl Peach, who's from Solidarity Notes Choir, who we all know from many of these actions, was sentenced to 2 years in prison. At the end of May, there was a Water of Life, a call to action to protect the Fraser, because TMX is trying to drill not just through Burnaby Mountain, but underneath the Fraser River, which everyone knows is like basically the lifeblood of British Columbia, and already has such depleted salmon stocks and depleted the ecosystem. And they want to drill a similarly sized, I think over 10-foot diameter hole tunnel underneath from Surrey into Colony Farms. At this time, also Climate Convergence was doing big, huge banner paintings. We painted over 60 feet of banner at Burnaby Mountain, opposing the drilling through Burnaby Mountain. So we did that close to a site where had been one of the places where over 200 people were arrested in 2004 opposing the project. As we know, TMX got the last permit to be got enough permits to be able to start drilling through Burnaby Mountain. And as of last week, we're allowed to. They haven't secured every permit, but the Canadian Energy Regulator has said, we'll just start drilling and then we'll figure out the rest from there. So the huge drill is in place, and the information we have is that they're trying to start imminently. So we had a banner drop last Friday with the huge new banners right by the drilling site with huge support and a lot of different community engagement. And that's something that I really want to emphasize is that like we never go to any of these actions or a banner drop. Sometimes we'll get some yells and some middle fingers, but like the amount of support and people that are thankful to that we're out there giving voice and informing them is incredible. We know that there's not a lot of support for this project in the Lower Mainland. And then just the news that we didn't get today or that we got yesterday is that another insurance provider for Trans Mountain Pipeline says it won't renew its policy. So this insurer is called Argo Group. And their justification was this type of project is not currently within Argo's risk appetite. So all that is in the last 2 months, and I just wanted to put that forward. Like this is when like we're not even allowed to be eating in restaurants because of the pandemic, but still we've been finding ways, and not just us, but so many groups have been finding ways to continue organizing. The Tiny House Warriors out have been constantly harassed by private TMX security. 3 of them have been in and out of court after they were the ones brutalized by police, but still standing up and standing strong and raising the resistance. And this project has not been built. They've been doing everything they can, trying to take advantage of the pandemic, but still we have a shot to stop it. And like we're constantly getting asked these questions by reporters like, well, what's the end game? Like, how are you actually going to stop it once and for all? And we don't have the 100% answer of how we're going to stop these projects or any project. We do know that we have a human and a moral and a political obligation to do our best. We do know that the more that we work together, the more coordinated we are, the more united we are, the louder we are, the more in numbers we are, the better chance we have to stop the project. And we do know that despite very few resources, the BC government promised to use every tool in the toolbox to stop the TMX pipeline if elected. Well, us as small activist organizations using the tools in our toolboxes have been thousands of times more effective in stopping this pipeline with very few resources than they have. And that's frustrating because they have the resources and they have the abilities to do a lot more. But it's also encouraging because we know what possibilities we have when we work together. What I wanted to say to close before we get into the Q&A or maybe another speaker is that when I see all these protests, we're gonna show some photos about Eagle Eyes, but I can see him there. You see him with his drum and his cedar hat and his songs. And we know that he would be everywhere. And I would be so excited to see how he would be contributing, how he would be at Fairy Creek, standing there up on the bridge, facing up against the police, where he would be standing right up against the TMX and all these different sites. All the Site C protests, he was there constantly during the hunger strike in front of the BC Hydro building against Site C. Also, with Marta, who passed away last year, we see their lives and we see our lives and we see what people are able to do. And then we see ourselves and what our potential is. And they impacted so many people through their lives and their work. And I think we need to remember that we too have that potential. And right now, so much potential is being wasted just by the government and industry. Like trying to build a pipeline is such a complicated thing. Trying to build a dam in an area using a form of dam that's never been really successfully done is so complicated. You have to build all these bridges as well. You're tunneling through all these rivers you're tunneling through a mountain. Like, they are going through so much effort, so much energy, so much waste to get these projects done. And then we have to spend so much time and energy building organizations and networks to stop them. And it's frustrating, but it's also encouraging, because I know, and we know, if we're able to put those resources towards the sustainable and the just solutions that we need, if we have a climate justice government, if climate justice organizers can work with institutions that aren't opposing them, the potential is incredible. And I really do believe that we can build a better world. And I really do believe that we're living in a really important time, and that all of these struggles that we're talking about at Site C, Fairy Creek, and TMX, that people are paying attention to what we're doing here in British Columbia. And we have a really incredible opportunity to set a precedent, not just by stopping these projects, but showing what human potential is when we stand up for a better world and do what we can to make that happen. And as the lockdowns and as public health orders are loosened a bit, I know there's a lot of people that have been feeling really disconnected and have been feeling really frustrated, and who've been wanting to be around people and feel connected. And with all the construction and all the things going on right now, I think we're going to have a potential to see some really important actions with more people. We'll do it in a safe way, but I think the next few months are going to be really important, and we've got a lot that we're able to do. But thank you very much, everybody, for your time tonight. I'm really appreciative to be here.
Thank you, Thomas, for your words and contribution, and for also reminding us of those that walked before us and continue to be with us when we protest, and when we hauled up a sign in defense of Indigenous rights and climate justice. We do tonight, before we go into any discussion or final comments from any of our speakers, want to take just a few minutes to remember Eagle Eyes. Eagle Eyes, Gordon August, was an organizer with Climate Convergence, someone who made his mark in just a few short years on our organizing, and passed away 3 years ago, incredibly, on March 31st, after suffering a stroke, actually while on Burnaby Mountain, protesting the pipeline and being part of the watch house that was being built there. Even as his health was deteriorating, Eagle Eyes was always there. He was postering for hours while using his cane, making sure proper protocol was followed at meetings, which we attempt to emulate today, and really in the front of every major action we organized. He was an incredible and dedicated human being who survived the residential school system, whose brutality is exposed more and more every day, and we must work to further expose. And he loved his family deeply, smiled easily, and made many contributions to the struggle for social and climate justice. One thing for certain, Eagle Eyes never gave up. He always was looking for ways to bring people together, and he was always imagining that big party that we were going to have when the Kinder Morgan and now the Trans Mountain Pipeline was canceled. So I think we can all see that ourselves. We wanted to share a few minutes of reflection tonight. We'll do a minute of silence if people could spend that time reflecting on Eagle Eyes, or if you didn't know him, others that have passed, that we carry on their legacy through our continued fight for a better world. And then if there's any comments that anyone would like to type or to share, we'll open a bit of space. So we'll start the minute now. Okay, thank you, everyone. Yeah, Burnaby mountain-sized drum circle. I could see it. We'll surround that mountain someday. I can see it for sure. If there's anything else anyone would like to share, Thomas, I don't know if you have any words tonight, but we do have time for some questions and answers as well. And I wanted to make a few announcements, but I'll give just a bit more space in memory of Eagle Eyes for now. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So before we go into any closing comments or questions and answers that people may have, I wanted to make a few announcements, and we'll be posting things in the chat. The first is that I want to say get involved in Climate Convergence. Climate Convergence is continuing to meet online, but beginning to do in-person actions, and of course supporting the important work, some of which we have talked about tonight, in fighting against TMX, in Site C Dam, supporting Fairy Creek, the continued fight we have to remember in Wet'suwet'en around the LNG pipeline up there, and really uniting the struggles across Canada, throughout the US, and around the world has been a main focus of our work, especially in the past year. We meet every 2 weeks on Wednesdays, starting at 7 o'clock. We will post some, Thomas and myself, our phone numbers in the chat, and an email address that you can call if you want the meetings, but they're on Zoom, and definitely open to all who want to participate and share ideas about organizing. We also are just going to post how to get in touch or follow what we're doing, and if others have social media and they want to put that in the chat, do that as well. Our website, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And then also, for the first time in 1 year of webinars, I am going to ask people for donations. This is not something that we often do, but Climate Convergence has been continuing to organize online and in person over the past year, and it is not free to do so. Of course, all of our online events are accessible as we can make them. When we've been having in-person events, we definitely prioritized how we can make those accessible as well, and free to attend and support. But we do have to pay for things like Zoom. We do have to pay for paints and fabrics, and we are asking if you have a way of contributing tonight, if you have some extra that you'd be willing to give. We're going to post our PayPal in the chat. We can also accept e-transfers. Just email us and we'll figure that out, and we definitely appreciate advance all the support we've gotten throughout the years, and anything that anyone is able to donate here tonight. Thank you. I also wanted to say that our next action, we are going to continue organizing the Don't Drill on Burnaby Mountain banner drops. We got a really great response, including from media, both the Burnaby Beacon and the Vancouver Sun / the province covered the last banner drop, and it seemed really used it actually as an opportunity to also report on the fact that the drilling had been approved. And so that was a good step forward for getting published in printed media actually as well of the province. So I encourage people to join us at our next banner drop. It's going to be Wednesday, June 9th at 4 p.m. We'll wrap it up in plenty of time for people to get home and in order to join the meeting. But we wanted to go ahead and keep these up as often as we can. We're also always looking for people that are willing to wake up and want to wake up early. We're very happy to do early morning banner drops too. We found so far the afternoons have worked best for us, but banner drops are going to continue to be important when we're still in this stage of social distancing and putting our health and safety first. So we talked about a lot tonight. We have tied together, I hope, and given some important updates about struggling and advancing climate action here in British Columbia. There's, of course, more that is happening all the time, but I think we have definitely brought to light some of what not all of us knew or were considering, and have heard some excellent updates. So thank you to all the panelists, everyone that's taken the time to speak tonight. There is just kind of a few questions in the chat, not a whole lot to address, but Ken, we've talked for an awful long time without hearing from you again. So if there's anything you'd like to say or address, I know that you had you answered a question a bit about natural gas development in BC and how that relates to Site C, if there's some words to that, and then anything else you'd like to say.
Yeah, quite. There was the question, of course, about LNG and using Site C power, obviously, for that, and of course water, and yeah, I mean, the whole LNG thing is so crazy and so energy wasting, just so that we can move our natural gas over to burn it somewhere else and still put it in the atmosphere. You know, and there again, it's just ludicrous. So no matter where you get the power from for powering LNG, it's a waste of power, and of course the water that's all used in the fracking, and of course that was just a big report that came out by the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, and on the issue of fracking induced earthquakes here, and how that's probably going to get worse. So another big issue and another big problem, and obviously threatening to major infrastructure that could affect safety up here. So another big issue, yeah.
Thank you very much, Ken. I'm just replying to someone's great idea in the chat about fundraising and outreach. It's very true. Is there anything you would like to say, Thomas, before we close tonight? Oh, there's just a question about Fairy Creek, actually, if you have something you'd like to share about that. I know that there has been actually some discussion about old growth forests and Indigenous rights on Vancouver Island as related to Fairy Creek. We could talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I'll maybe we can post the Union of BC Indian Chiefs statement on Fairy Creek.
Great idea.
I think that'll clarify some things. And I just wanted to, I wanted to mention this hypocrisy anyways, that John Horgan and Nathan Cullen were on the radio, I think today or yesterday, and John Horgan would say if they canceled the cutting of the old growth, that would be kind of a return to colonialism, because the band has agreed to have the cutting go on. But when it comes to flooding the traditional territories of Indigenous nations up in the Peace River Valley, all he can say is, I'm not the first person to disappoint Indigenous nations. So they're picking and choosing when they want to listen and who they want to listen to. And I think we need to, pay really close attention to it. And to acknowledge that decisions that are being made, like there are Indigenous nations who've signed agreements with Trans Mountain for the pipeline. But these are Indigenous nations that are signing them under duress, when a lot of other opportunities have been taken away from them, when really desperate, and the economic opportunities are so few and far between, and they're being told, you accept this or we're going to do it anyways and you're not going to get the benefits. So I don't think anybody in their right mind is like going out of their way, except if you're a logging company, to log old growth. And if communities are given opportunities to have sustainable infrastructure that doesn't involve cutting down trees, I am sure they would take them. But I think the Union of BC Indian Chiefs statement can clarify the complexities of the situation a bit better. I just wanted to close by thanking everybody again. Alison will do the better thank you, but at a Teal, there was a protest in Surrey at the Teal Jones, one of their plants. And you know what the company did is they tried to hand out little saplings to the activists, and in their like their tree planting saplings. And in their comments to the media, the owner of Teal Jones said, "We basically want the same things as the activists." And we've seen Justin Trudeau and John Horgan say that repeatedly. And like, the good thing for us is that they're recognizing the pressure, and they're recognizing that there is public support for the demands that we're putting forward. So much so that they have to echo them. The danger is with their strong amount of media, with their like ability to get media and to buy advertising and all those things, is they can hijack the words that we're using and the movements that and the wording that our movements are putting forward. So that's why it's so important that we continue in whatever safe way we can a consistent public presence, so people know what climate justice organizing actually is, so people know what an attempt to protect the planet actually is, and know that there's alternatives, and know that there's organizations and people they can get involved in. And I want to encourage everybody, if you're in the Lower Mainland, there's lots of organizations to get involved in. And even if you can't make meetings, just do what you can. They want us to feel confused, or they want us to feel overwhelmed, and they want the end result of that be that we do nothing. But do whatever you can, do something, however big, however small that is. If you can do it with more people, the better. But don't get discouraged. Don't let this stop us. We're seeing we have opportunities to fight, and opportunities to win, and opportunities to work together, and opportunities to build a better world that we all deserve and that we all need. So thank you very much, everybody. I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you, Thomas Davies. Thank you to Joshua Wright and to Ken Boone. I have just a few words I wanted to say before we invite Kelly White to give her closing, if she would like today. You know, after these webinars, sometimes I leave thinking, how can it be that this destruction continues? We've seen the photos, we've seen the destruction. You know, how could you watch an 1,000-year-old tree get cut down and think that that is how we should be progressing as humans on this planet? You know, Canada's anticipated oil and gas production is supposed to grow over the next 30 years. We have Prime Minister Trudeau says that there's a plan for the environment, for a reduction in GHG emissions, that Canada is going to stop providing such an immense contribution to the destruction of this planet and of the atmosphere, and the pollution of the ocean, everything that Canada produces, especially as a rich and wealthy country. A country that has taken so much from the rest of the world and continues to take so much from the rest of the world in order for us to have such a high standard of living here. And yet it's a country that's going to produce 60.5 billion barrels of oil and 187 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in the next 30 years. How can the government then turn around and say that we're lowering our emissions, we're doing our part? The government of Canada is a world climate leader. To be able to lower carbon emissions, to be able to stop global warming, this is not what needs to happen. And the scientists of the world, and I think many of the people of the world, have a consensus on this. There's so much more we can do as far as education and mobilization, but I think people are beginning to see more and more how the balance of the world is off. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed that this delicate relationship between humans and the world around us is severely disrupted, is in crisis. 16% of the world's remaining carbon budget is what the government of Canada is planning on putting into the atmosphere in the next 30 years. That's why it's called a carbon bomb. And that's why Canada, the shield that Canada has is coming off as far as being this country that fights for the climate, and as far as being a country that stands for human rights. And I think the media coverage around the world about the discovery of 215 bodies of Indigenous children in Kamloops, the declaration by the United Nations that Indigenous people in Canada live in third world developing conditions, or the fact that on any given day, 100 reserves across Canada are under boiled water advisories, are also working to expose what the government of Canada's actual role is in the world today. Canada, the government and the economic system in Canada is one that puts profit and exploitation of resources above all else. This mode of operation, capitalism, is warming, melting, and killing the planet and humanity. Each time a new report is released, the predictions are grimmer, but our path towards being able to reverse this is clearer. Governments of the wealthiest countries of the world continue business as usual. We saw emissions drop because of COVID-19 and the lockdown that many countries went under, which of course impacted the poorest and most oppressed people in those countries the most. But we've seen already that emissions have rebounded just like that. Production to create everything that we consume in Canada and the United States has jumped up again. Business as usual. But what do we have? What option do we have? And I think that's what we've gathered people here today to say. What option do we have but to continue organizing, mobilizing, and educating, to really using every tool in the toolbox? I hope that Premier Horgan regrets saying that, because we can use it so much against him. We can make it so obvious that he hasn't even opened the toolbox to see what's possible to be used. We have to build a mass majority movement to defend Mother Earth and the future of humankind. And as Christine said, we have to believe that we will win, because every moment there are more and more reasons to stand up in defense of Mother Earth, in solidarity with those that struggle for a better and more sustainable future and for humanity. Climate Convergence has continued to organize large-scale postering campaigns, these webinars, physically distant and safe actions over the past year, working with others to build creativity, dynamism, and really a belief that building a more united climate justice movement is possible and necessary. And I invite you to join us and to get involved. Every united struggle that we wage in defense of Mother Earth is an important opportunity to expand and broaden the climate justice movement. Tonight, and I know we took this further, we've exposed the lies of the government of Canada or the United States, or specifically the NDP government of John Horgan, and also the lies of their capitalist billionaire backers in the oil and gas industry. We must collectively act on this now. We must act to demand that people's needs are put before that of pipelines and profits. And to do this, we have no option than to build a sustained and consistent united movement for climate justice and Indigenous rights. There is no climate justice without Indigenous rights. So we'll post the chats to get involved again. I invite people to join in donating. I was reminded by Climate Convergence organizer that you can donate monthly when you click the box, and it can be a smaller donation spread out over many months. It can also be a large donation given every month, but please consider becoming a sustaining donor, and we'll get you some of these buttons, of course, if you'd like. So contact us, we'll put our phone numbers in the chat again in the email. Thank you for joining us. Kelly, I'm going to go ahead and announce and put up the poster for the event at Peace Arch Park tomorrow, and then let you close for tonight. So this is the event that's happening tomorrow, Saturday at noon. The meeting between Kamloops families and those coming from south of the US-Canada border in order to commemorate and mark the mass grave containing the remains of 215 Indigenous children. There's a call to join on Saturday, June 5th, which is tomorrow at noon at the Peace Arch Park. Others are joining south of the border today in order to begin this commemoration. So there's the information. I believe we posted the link earlier, but we will, again, I encourage you to support and participate if you can. And please join me in welcoming Kelly White. I guess you're muted again, Kelly. Sorry.
How's that?
That's great.
In there now?
You're all here.
Well, Haichka CM, Haichka in our language, thank you, CM relatives. We're taught, I was shocked when in ceremony, we're told that we're related to all nations of the world, the nations of the birds, the nations of the water living, the nations of the four-legged and the winged, and thank this evening the two-legged for your contributions to our strength and helps us to constitute the faith of governance to create a better semblance of justice for all living in unity, not Samat as one. Grateful for the assembly this evening and thankful for all the participants that joined. Be awesome to hear all their input. I'm humbled by the politeness of the participants joining in and the knowledge that is out there and experiences shared won't be the same. Not just saying that. See that the UNDRIP is, I'd like to add my own lobby. UNDRIP is hard earned. Every part of the United States government shot at us when we were kids creating that in the 70s. Every level of government shot at the Indigenous with tanks, harder than the US government shot at the Indigenous. But you know, either way, United Nations came in to intervene, and I'm grateful for the runners of our local group that helped create those ceasefires for Gustafson's Lake, Oka, and Chiapas, this group, and to share the semblance of justice. And this time, you know, Wounded Knee shot at me, but the bullet was aimed at all of our nations of the world, and not just Indigenous. I'm grateful for this assembly this evening, understanding that the wrath of evil or the unnatural tentacles of the pipelines affects us all, that the apartheid that we face as Indigenous people is not only on Indigenous people, that the bullet is the ink now of the Canadian government. Thankful to all the panelists and the speakers this evening that acknowledge the hummingbird. It was said for centuries, the tiniest ones will rule. And grateful that that was brought up this evening. You know, it's not the money that that makes us our world go around, but it helps. So whoever can donate, I'm grateful to support that with my $1 billion when I win it. I'm grateful for the knowledge that you can't pay for, the soul, mind, and body sharing from the panelists, and the ear loaning of the participants, respects. And to those ones that are suffering on the island, no new news. Apartheid's been on the land. I thank the Indigenous people of the world, which is every nationality of the world are Indigenous from somewhere. So I thank the Indigenous people of the world that are living in Canada and creating this semblance of justice and in unity with the Indigenous peoples of the world who are the heart of the earth where we come from. You dismantle the heart of the earth, then there's no life chance for all. Like to acknowledge the bear and the berries this evening, the nourishment of knowledge, a lot of the medicines. A lot of people don't know that our languages around the world, either you're French or African or Chinese or European or North Central South America, the languages come from the land. From the land, the berries, the rivers, the forests, the sounds, the whispers of the earth give us our languages. A lot of people don't know that. So in the ones protecting the harvest a lot in BC that have been attacked also are the bears. And all the Site C Dam, the forestry, the abortion of justice on the island, with our eldest ones, the trees, the lungs of the earth, the rivers, the veins of the earth that we all respect this evening. I'm so honored to hear and the sharing knowledge of all this evening, healing our nations of united resistance to apathy. And the ones that participate in the Peace Arch and all the vigils for the 215. I thank the spirits of the 10 million residential school students that didn't come home, that disappeared. 10 million. And our families from Salish Nation are in BC, Washington, Oregon, and Montana. And some of the families in the States have been busy collecting the archives of the disappeared of thousands of our Indigenous people in the States that went to those residential schools unchecked, no hassle about plunder of rape and murder, creating all these corporations that you're all addressing now for human rights, civil liberties, and rights of life. This time, invite you to accept the bears and the berries into your mind, body, and soul work that you're engaging with. They can't talk, but they're the medicine. A lot of people don't know Thunderbird. We're in the land of the Thunderbird on the Northwest Coast, and the Thunderbird connects us with the spiritual beings. So, the berries that are gifted see-through rocks, and those are our gourds and rattles. Ant hills offer us, we sing songs and smoke the ants, and then they bring tiny, perfectly round rocks up. They help us sing and they bring us those languages. So thank you all doctoring us this evening with the good knowledge, and invite you all support the total declaration of Indigenous people. They saying before, wounded knee shot at us, and now the bullet is the ink, the enemy to our peace, and that has no prejudice of nationalities or rich or poor. Grateful not so much that we're one this evening working forward together. So I invite you to engage the bear this evening and the berries in this song, and carry it with you in your heart with the messages that you work with. And thank the Eagles also for carrying those messages as high as we can with the teeny little tiny hummingbird, giving us such a great blessing. La 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 la. Hey hey yo, hey yo, hey la hey la hey la, hey la hey la hey la. Hey hey oh. hey, I ho, eh, la, eh, la, eh, la, eh, la, eh, la, eh, la, oh, hey, hey, yo, ah, hey, hey, yo, eh, la, eh, la, eh, la. So even, you know, our relatives, the bears, ask the berries. Don't mind me, I'm coming to join you. Don't mind me, I'm going to harvest for the year. And the berry blesses that bear and all of us with our languages. So thank you for supporting the rights to life the way you all are, putting your life on the line against this big moving apartheid giant. And I pray the best for you all. Take some berries in, take some water in at sunrise, at sundown. Put your hands up at sunrise with the world Indigenous people. Put your hands up at sundown. Feed your spirit, strengthen yourself, bless yourself. I know you do already, and I thank you for sharing that knowledge. Hi, Chikutchiklimatomi Memorial for Wamble Eagle Guy with his little cane stick. Hi, Chika, for the spirit of that sharing this evening to have a memorial for brother did good, doing good, looking at us probably laughing away with the eagles now, telling us carry on, carry on. Thank you for your strength, your wisdom and courage to change what you can. All my relations, best and best of best to you all. All my relations, anyone wants to carry on with Peace Arch tomorrow, we're meeting at the Friendship Center Commercial in Hastings, 10 o'clock, 10:30, we leave to the Peace Arch, 10:30. And the Kamloops families are in this evening, and they'll be at Friendship Center tomorrow, accepted by the Lummi youth. It's hard, so we invite you all to be there, support. We'll be creating the service the first time they're leaving their home, looking after so many coming to pay their respects. Respects to you all. Highest of the honors, healing our nations of united resistance to apathy and protecting the umbilical cord of our sacred Mother Earth. All my relations, best of you. See you next seminar.
Thank you, Kelly. Kelly White, Coast Salish Elder, constant side of climate convergence and other struggles for a just and better world. Thank you all again for attending tonight. We will be sharing information for the follow-up email. We will be inviting you to the banner drop and continuing actions next Wednesday. And once again, the invitation is there to get involved, to join this movement for climate justice, for climate action here in BC. Thank you again, Ken, Maureen, Thomas, Kelly, Christine. We will see you again online or in the streets.